Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Not Your Father's Movies. I'm Vito.
I'm Mike.
I'm Dan.
I'm Jesse, and we've got some Dan birthday energy today.
Yeah. Birthday energy!
This is a great theme
But it's
song.
Dan's birthday, so it's kind of mellow.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dan's birthday episode. We are just talking real quietly. We've just had some good non-caffeinated tea. Just here to kind of just kick around some easygoing films. Dan, you've picked some pretty easygoing movies today, right? Just some nice hangout.
Oh yeah. Nothing to mix things up. I just wanted some feel good comedies is what I was looking for.
So we're doing Forrest Gump and A Sound of Music double episode, right?
Oh, hot take. I am actually not a huge Forrest Gump fan.
That's fine.
That's absolutely fine. I'm right there with you.
Oh, I was expecting some ire coming from you guys.
Meh.
Wow.
No,
Okay.
Kind of meh. Kind of a big meh.
As the Gen Zers would say, that movie's mid.
See, I like Forrest Gump, but I don't love it. If anybody said that they don't like that, I say, yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Normally, if I say that in a room, everyone attacks me. So
It's not like you said like
This
the
is
Shawshank Redemption sucks. Like that would be a way different
No, that's a
sentence.
masterpiece. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is a safe space for people who share our opinions.
No, I was totally kidding. Dan has picked different movies. I'm going to hand over the reins of this episode to Dan. It was my birthday last week. Dan's birthday this week. Happy birthday, Dan. Talk to us about what you have chosen for us to talk about, because I'm really sorry, listeners. It's not a Forrest Gump Sound of Music double feature. I don't know why I pulled both of those.
It's so weird.
I don't know what's going on with my brain. Dan, what did you pick?
Different is definitely a word to describe these movies.
Mhm.
I chose the 2009 Mr. Nobody, which is written and directed by Jaco Van Dormael. I looked up how to say his last name, and I think that was it. This movie is very, very strange. That's how I told my wife. I tried to get her ready to watch this.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is a strange movie. It's weird. And she's like, is it weird like Everything Everywhere All at Once? I was like, no, but also maybe weirder. I don't know. It's a weird movie. It's definitely
much fewer sex toys, we can say.
Yes, but more sex. So
Exactly.
And then the second film we're going to cover today is Denis Villeneuve, my guy, his 2013 Enemy. Also a kind of a bizarre film. Both these movies are kind of random picks, not random in the sense that I didn't think about, pairing two movies, but they're very, very unique movies, and they're kind of outside of a genre, in my opinion. They're very, very strange. And I picked them because this is my birthday episode. I don't think I could ever convince you guys to do these movies outside of my birthday episode, but I love them, and I was excited to talk about them with you guys. So yeah, thanks so much, guys, for doing this birthday episode thing. I think it's awesome, and yeah, I get to talk about weird movies on my birthday. That's great.
Yeah, you do.
Just to interject a little bit. Now, I think eventually we might have done Mr. Nobody, because Mike has been telling Vito and I to watch it for years, and we've never watched it until now.
Until we were compelled to watch it.
Continuing the long-standing pod tradition of not watching anything that Mike recommends until someone else recommends it.
What are you talking about? That's exactly how Jesse treats every movie that I like. And then every movie I hate, Jesse's like, yeah, I'll probably check that out. This is how we work. It's weird.
It's a really healthy place.
Yeah.
We know ourselves.
We fell in love in a healthy place. No, we did not. Well, Dan, you want to, take the reins here. Tell us about you prepared this Google Doc. You made this whole thing. Tell us how you want to do this.
Yeah, I can jump into some of the cast and crew for Mr. Nobody to start off. Obviously, Jared Leto is the biggest name here. I don't know. Have we done a Jared Leto movie before?
The Little
We
Things.
have. It was what was the first? What was the first thing that we did? It was the Denzel Washington movie,
The Little Things.
The Little.
Forgot
Forgot about that movie. That movie
Was that the only one?
We did a watch along for
Oh.
Dr. Michael Morbius.
Oh yes,
Mike
yes,
and I
you
did.
guys did.
So this
Also
is Jared
something-
Leto's third appearance on the show. Wait, did he like co-star in something? I'm getting a weird tickling in the back of my head.
We didn't do anything for Justice League.
No, we were going to, but we never actually ended up doing that. You know what? I'm gonna pull up this. Continue.
Was that like an old
Continue
movie
talking
he was
about Jared
in?
Leto.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask what you guys think about him. I know Sir is, I'm pretty sure he's got a big man crush on Jared Leto, from what I've heard.
Sir, our biggest fan, yes. We know, and best collaborator. No, well, and also David. Just shouting out collaborators here. But yeah, he loves Jared Leto, and we blew his mind after the Little Things episode when we pointed out that he's also the lead singer of 30 Seconds to Mars.
He is indeed. Get your mind blown again, kids. He is the lead singer of 30 Seconds to Mars. Break him down, bury him. Please, actually, someone really bury him for real. No, we have not done another Jared Leto movie. Morbius and The Little Things are 2.
I will say that of the 3 movies we've covered, I think he's at his best here. He also I think he really fits with what's happening on screen. His stare in this movie, it's very poignant at times. I think it draws me into what's happening on screen more than I think another actor could maybe even pull off in this situation. So I think Mr. Nobody really fits him here.
I agree about his stare. His eyes are obviously his best feature. They're very very deep eyes.
You don't love his hair? You don't think that's his best feature?
No, I'm pretty clinical when it comes to Jared Leto. I've seen a lot of his movies, and listened to a lot of 30 Seconds to Mars, and also argued with, again, good friend and collaborator Sir about Jared Leto ad nauseum. He is, I would say, very well cast for most of this movie. Most of this movie, he's doing a very good job. In general, though, I feel that Jared Leto is rarely in the same movie as other people. He obviously cares a lot about acting and acting well, but I think that acting well is his own standard that he brings to the table, and that's rarely really influenced by the movie that he's in. I think you need a movie like this where he's playing so many different versions of the same character that he can really lean into, acting. In other movies, it's just like, what are you doing here? Like, what are you doing on this screen? Like, I think it's this one and maybe Requiem for a Dream are the 2 times where I wasn't pulled out of the movie consistently thinking that's Jared Leto. Everything else, though, I'm just always like, oh, it's Jared Leto. Oh, look, yep, he's being Jared Leto. Yep, look at him go.
Like, I do like what you're saying about him, like, seeming like he's in a different movie than all the other actors. It really works here because, like, in this whole weird movie about all these different timelines, that this Jared Leto kind of maybe even knows about all the other timelines,
right?
And he is different than everybody else around him. He is making different decisions. He's living a different life than everybody. Before we move on to maybe the rest of the cast and crew, can I ask why you chose these 2 movies in particular?
Yeah, so it kind of goes into what we'll talk about later with the connections between them. Both of them are movies that I kind of, they fall into this bucket of like, I wasn't the same person after watching the movie as before kind of thing, where they had a huge impact, maybe not on my day-to-day life, but almost like they hit me in my brain somehow. Like they like landed in my psyche, and I like the most random times a scene from Mr. Nobody will like pop into my head, or something that I felt during watching Enemy will pop into my brain. And it's like, these movies really have something powerful in them, something very impactful. And that's kind of the connective tissue that I originally was thinking about when I picked these 2, was just movies that have affected me, and I've never been able to shake them from my brain, or I've never forgotten about them, even if I don't watch them all the time. Like I don't watch Enemy every other Saturday, just in case you guys are worried about me.
I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to Jared Leto, I agree with you guys. He does feel like he's always Jared Leto, like in any movie he's in, and that's a very bizarre thing to be, like to be that he's a very, very odd personality, and it works in this movie. I think he kind of I always connect him and like Johnny Depp for some reason in my brain, where they're always playing kind of their own person, and you kind of know what you're getting before you even see the movie. But then there's always a little bit of a twist on it, or they're kind of aiming for something slightly different, but they're always there. You still see the personality of the actor in the character, so they always bring themselves to the character.
It also almost seems like Jared Leto should be in a Tim Burton movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whenever they do the live action remake of The Corpse Bride, that's his movie right there.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
The only
forget
difference,
Johnny Depp, who actually did the voice for that.
Johnny Depp is too swarthy, you know? I think the only difference I would see is that Johnny Depp is not interested in doing like these sort of transformative roles and hasn't been for a long time, maybe since like Edward Scissorhands or Ed Wood. And Jared Leto got the Oscar for playing a man with AIDS in Dallas Buyers Club. And he got really skinny for that. And then also for, he's gotten really fat for some roles. He played Mark David Chapman in a movie that no one saw. He gained like 150 pounds. Obviously, like he's a real method guy, and Johnny Depp is not a method guy. But it's funny that you call out that comparison because it is weirdly fitting. It's like all these gymnastics that Jared Leto goes through to be a method actor, right? But it's like it doesn't really seem to affect the performance. You know, I was joking with Mike. The laugh he does as the old man is the same as his Joker laugh. It's just the like that's what you could come up with. Or like in House of Gucci, they bury him underneath pounds of makeup, and the best thing you can do is like a Mario impersonation. I am like a pigeon. I think that's really strange about him is that it's like Daniel Day-Lewis type commitment, Johnny Depp type delivery.
Sir's gonna love that.
Yeah, he's gonna hate everything I just said.
I've always felt with Jared Leto, like it always surprises me when he moves at all. Like his eyes are just like I think it's something to do with the fact that his eyes are so like,
piercing.
They're so piercing and luminescent, and he's got the hair. I think that if he got rid of that hair, it would help him to look like someone who is acting.
Yeah, but
like it's really hard for me to like consider him as a person who acts, who like does actions. I find it very difficult to do that. And I mean, I think that this movie, like you said, Dan, is kind of a very perfect role for him because he's not really human in some ways. Like he's sort of other.
Yeah.
In this movie, the character, Mr. Nemo Nobody, is maybe a little bit other.
Yeah, without spoiling. Yes, I agree with that.
But yeah, moving on to other cast, we've also got Diane Kruger as the adult Anna. I think she's fantastic in this. She's also in
Inglourious Basterds.
Inglourious Basterds, yes. She's the adult, the main lady, right?
No,
she's not the French.
That's actually Melanie Laurent, right?
Right. I'm sorry. That's where I'm getting confused. She's in Enemy. But Anna, or Diane Kruger, is
Helen of Troy, baby.
Yes, yeah. But she is in Inglourious Basterds. She's the German actress, is it? Or she's some sort of like,
yeah. She's
the one that gets her leg shot and she has to put it in a cast and all that.
Yeah, and gets strangled by Christoph Waltz's character. Yeah.
Yeah. She's also in the National Treasure. I think both of them. She's
just the first one,
or just the first one. Okay,
I think I'm gonna look it up because she was such a crush of mine when I was in high school, based off National Treasure.
I'm pretty sure she's in National Treasure 2. Like,
oh yeah, there it is.
Didn't they get married and then divorced by the time National Treasure 2 comes around?
I don't remember the plot, but you're right. She is in the second.
Yeah, she's great. She's beautiful and she looks different with the brown or as a brunette, but she's great. Also, Sarah Polley as Elise. I looked up her filmography. I didn't recognize anything. She's in a lot of different things, but I've never seen her in anything else besides this.
She's really fantastic in Dawn of the Dead, and she's amazing as a young woman in The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which is one of my very favorite movies. It makes me a little bit sad because she's obviously an actress that has so much range and so much ability that she's not in more things. Like her last film credit was in 2010. And since then she's, last television credit was 2008. She has a feature film coming up that she's directed and written, but she seems to have stepped behind the camera recently. And that makes me a little bit sad because that means that Mr. Nobody was her third to last film that she acted in. And she's fantastic in this. Really, really stunning, I thought anyway.
Yeah, her character in this is so just heart-wrenching. It's really, really powerful. We also have Lynn Dan Pham as Jean. Those are the three women in Nemo Nobody's life/lives.
Jean gets shafted in this movie. Man, I really wanted more of Jean. It's like
yeah. Every time she's on the screen, you're like, she's great. She's kind of steals the scene, and then she's in very few scenes. I'm not really sure why.
And every time she's just like, could you just remember that my name and that you're married to me?
Bummer.
Stop calling me other names.
I remember her from Ninja Assassin, which we've actually mentioned on the show before. And then I also remember she's in last year's Blue Bayou with Alicia Vikander that I've been meaning to see.
We've also got Riz Ifan. He's Nemo's father. Also a stunning performance. Also his mother as well, Natasha Little. Both of them are, I think, incredible. This is a stacked cast, in my opinion. This is an incredible group of people. All of them are firing on all cylinders, and I think that it's. I didn't realize it till maybe this last viewing that the cast is what really, really draws me to this movie, as well as the content and everything else. But the cast is just phenomenal. Every single character is completely sold for me. I believe just about every second of their performances and the characters they're portraying.
Yeah, they do all really work. I never doubted that Elise, well, I'm not sure. I guess we're still not in the spoilers, but Elise's character is very particular. I've seen that sort of person done, but like, I never doubted that she was that and she was on screen. So yeah.
Her hysterical crying didn't sound like an actor doing hysterical crying. It sounded like someone that was actually having a breakdown.
Yeah.
Okay, quick sidebar. I agree with almost everything you said, Dan, except that I think that when Jared Leto puts on the old man makeup, he is f***ing terrible. I think every moment he is an old man was unbearable to me watching it. And I don't know why they couldn't have just cast an old man. Every moment just read like acting, from his weird walk where it's such a performative like shake that he's doing, his terrible laugh, his like, I have a dry throat delivery, and just like drink a glass of water. Every moment of it, I was immediately ripped out of the movie going, that's Jared Leto underneath pounds of makeup like I know he likes to do. And I couldn't get out of it. Every other part that he played, fantastic. Really enjoyed him as every incarnation of Nemo. But just as an old man, I could not get on board. I couldn't get on board. Did no one else feel this way about Old Man Leto?
I liked Old Man Leto. Old Man Leto was completely sold for me. Yeah.
I did not mind.
Because he was still weird and he's still other and he's still out there, just like all the other renditions of Nemo. Only now he's like 114 years old and very crotchety, can't talk straight, can't walk straight, can't think straight. It just didn't even seem. I don't think it worked at all because it didn't even seem like the same Nemo that we've seen in every other part of the movie. It was a completely different person. Well, he was like 80 years older.
So it's like I saw no connective tissue between this, and of course, maybe that's the point because of spoilers, because of what we understand about Old Man Leto or Old Man Nemo at the end of the movie. Maybe it was the point to make him so crazy and off the wall. But I just thought that it was weird to me that performance was so hammy and crazy when so many other points of the movie, like especially when dealing with Sarah Pauli's character Elise, where Nemo is so human, and Jared Leto is selling this performance with a lot of subtlety. Just the way that he's just standing, like with his arms open. It was just so bizarre to me. Then he just goes through and is like doddering around on his little cane, yelling at people. I just
see. For me, I saw it as like a comedic relief. Like my wife laughed at every he like flips off the cameras and he's like he's I don't know. I thought he was funny. I thought it wasn't off-putting. Obviously, he's an off-putting old man, but that's the point. He's kind of like ridiculously off-putting. I liked it. I think it's almost supposed to be like taking you out of the more serious, like every scene in this is like bam, 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 like serious stuff, drama. And then you kind of get taken out of it with those, like the interactions between him and this journalist.
And also I found the off-putting thing, like the older Nemo gets, the more I'm like, man, I'm really not, I don't like you. Like the more off-putting I found the character. So when he's 114 years old and I found him really off-putting, like, I guess this is where we end up. And also for the first time, the reason why the old man is different is because he's being interviewed rather than, I don't know, like for the most part, except when Nemo's is in very specific situations, which I can't get into because we're not doing spoilers, he doesn't really talk very much even. It's almost like he's more observing the world rather than really trying to give something to it, which is kind of what they're forcing the old man to do. So it made sense to me that he was weirder then.
What about you?
What about you, Mike?
You said very little.
I was fine with him. I have no problem with old man.
All right, I'm the only one.
I kept being like, I kept asking myself, do I have a problem with this? Like, this is definitely this is definitely Jared Leto. Like, he is definitely in old man makeup. Do I have a problem with this right now? No, not really.
I just thought that there was such good drama in the rest of the movie, and this is like a cartoon.
I do see what you're saying though. Like, it does, like, there is. He was never really sarcastic or like grating in any of his other periods of life until he's 118 years old and about to die. And so that was like a little bit of a, disconnect, but it's also fine.
I'm putting it down. I hated it, but I understand you guys' points. And a sidebar.
I will say, I'm jumping back in the sidebar, I guess. But like, I will say that some part of me did feel like a weird jump because there's young Nemo played by baby Nemo played by a different actor. There's kid Nemo played by a different actor. Teenage Nemo played by a different actor. Adult Nemo played by the different actor, and then old Nemo played by the same actor.
Yeah,
that's just weird. Like, it seems like they could have just had different actors for everybody.
Just get an old man.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that could have been better, but I also felt this was fine.
All right, jumping out of the sidebar.
Yeah. Also wanted to shout out the original music in this movie is by the brother of the director, Jaco Van Dormael. He's the one that did like the guitar do 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 do, which is I love that music in it. I think it's beautiful.
Beautiful music.
Yeah,
I've been in the mood for that music before and just put it on. It's pretty soothing. It's pretty chill. It's kind of fun sounding. Yeah, what did you guys think about the music?
Oh yeah, it was great. It was it was like bouncy, but also like fraught with meaning, maybe.
Yeah. There's a ton of different instruments that are going on too. Like there's always something interesting happening sonically, to the point where it almost seemed kind of chaotic at times. Like between we're doing a synth heavy, now we're doing some strings, now we're doing guitar. They do a good job of keeping the theme going. Yeah, I found myself very moved by a lot of the music, and even more so considering the fact that he died from cancer in 2008. This is his final work.
Oh wow, I did not know that. That's good to point out.
Yeah, I thought the music was really cool. I mean, it's very unexpected for a movie like this. If I like when you see the first frames of this movie, I was expecting like far heavier everything to be coming up, but the music always made it far lighter than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, like Mr. Sandman plays a lot. That's not something.
Boom, 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 boom.
That's not the sort of theme I was expecting from it. Like, I would have thought it was going to be a more Mr. Haunting Sandman or something. Like, just something like slower and drearier. Instead, it wasn't. It was kind of always a little peppy.
It was like Mr. Sandman, give me a dream. You're like, oh, this is a sarcastic rendering of this song. And I thought that at times that would kind of undercut some of the drama that was happening, but it surprisingly didn't do that. Like in in the Elise timeline, when he goes to get his car washed, he's in the automatic car wash, and they're playing Into Each Life Some Rain Must Fall by the Ink Spots and Ella Fitzgerald. That's been one of my favorite songs for decades. Like me as a kid growing up, and when they queued it up, it's a song that has a very sweet melancholy, but that's not really the mood in the car. Like you're not entirely certain yet what this timeline, with the struggles in this timeline, or like his obsession with cleaning his car, or his troubles with his wife and his family. And it's weird because the lyrics are matching perfectly what's going on in his head, but the music is much more upbeat. And you would think that would clash, but it doesn't, because the car wash is so colorful and nice.
It's a car wash.
It's kind
like
of
what you love to do as a kid. You love to go through the drive-through car wash.
And especially,
like, hey, Dad, can I go through the drive-through car wash today?
It's such a weird juxtaposition all the time between these old like doo-wop or jazz standards. And of course we have to mention that Jaco Van Dormael is a jazz musician. He's well versed, and these are all jazz or doo-wop or early pop standards. He's deploying them, very, very well. I just think it's kind of a magic trick that they're here, and they're here in the right spots.
Oh yeah, a couple really awesome needle drops. I love the For Your Precious Love that plays when he's watching the little girl Anna like go and jump off the diving board.
Mm-hmm.
This movie introduced me to the song and just made me love the song. It's so beautiful. We played it at my wedding reception.
Wow,
it's
cool.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite from that era. But another scene I love with the needle drop is this, when they're playing Mr. Sandman, when it shows the transition from Nemo as kind of a young boy to Nemo as a teenager, and it's panning around the room, and like as his room changes into like a teenage rebellious room, Mr. Sandman like turns into like heavy metal. I love the way the room and the music change seamlessly is awesome.
Like, Mr. Middleman.
Yeah. So good. Anyways, yeah, I wanted to also mention the cinematography is by Christophe Beaucarn. He's a highly respected French cinematographer. I also did not recognize most of the movies in his filmography, but almost all of them were rated like 7.2 and 8 on IMDb. So very, very highly respected cinematographer. Definitely someone that I should just add to my watch list and start diving into some of his stuff, because I think this movie is beautiful and must have a lot to do with his talent.
Yeah, it is very beautiful, to the point where you're kind of sitting there going like, this cost how much? Like, how did it not cost like 3 times that amount?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also, like, the cinematography, it has a similar effect where it's kind of light and airy almost. It's very, the colors pop. It's beautiful, and like at the same time, like it's beautiful in that way, in like these fresh sort of primary colors. In the same way that the music is like beautiful and fresh, but what's going on is like a lot more, a lot less happy.
Yeah, fresh is a good word. Clean
Yeah.
too. Like he highlights, I think this is very much, so the directors talked about making sure there's like a distinct color palette per Nemo, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't really pick up on that the first time through until the very end, where they show you like the different vases dropping.
Right.
But then, using white as a kind of a common denominator, there's a very strong white in every one of them. Very strong bright that I think is really interesting to use. It gives it a very clean but not sanitized feeling.
Yeah.
Which I thought was took a deft hand.
Awesome.
It was funny. It reminded me a little bit of the Truman Show.
Oh yeah.
And I was going to say earlier, Jared Leto reminds me a little bit of Jim Carrey in that, like, they actually look similar at times, which isn't something I'd usually think of with the two of them, but somehow they do.
The haircut in some scenes are very similar in the kind of with a clean, buttoned up look.
Yeah. That one's I think they might share a little bit of DNA, maybe, but
yeah.
Also,
with the neighborhood
different
structure too. The neighborhoods look similar to me.
I think that Truman would definitely light his car on fire.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jesse.
Yeah.
I think most of it is similar, except for the like. There's some London scenes, and that's where it always feels different to me. I guess we'll talk.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into first
Yeah.
impressions. I think one thing I noticed when you just said the Truman Show, it almost has like a dollhouse feel to a lot of the scenes. Where I mean, there's weird scenes where it shows a street and then like the kid puts a car into the scene.
Oh, right.
Right. So it is like a dollhouse or a miniature
Mm-hmm.
set. But I feel like a lot of the Truman Show feels that way. Spoilers for Truman Show.
Came in here. We're working hard to avoid spoilers for Mr. Nobody and for Enemy, but there you go, just spoiling Truman Show.
Yeah, I think we can just enter spoiler territory for Mr. Nobody, and then we can just talk about Enemy. I feel like there's going to be a lot less to say about Enemy, so I'm fine spending some more time talking about Mr. Nobody.
Up to you.
Well, yeah. Okay. Do you want to talk about it? You said you wanted to do first impressions or whatever.
Yeah, let's do first impressions for Mr. Nobody, and then we can kind of tackle Enemy separately. So one stormy night in 2013, so the year that
The year the Enemy came out.
the year the Enemy came out, but a couple years after Mr. Nobody came out. That's one thing weird about Mr. Nobody. It came out in Europe like years before it came out in the United States.
What?
It had almost like a separate international release and then American release. It did really well globally, internationally, and then Americans just did not have it. They did not like it. It did not make it big. Yeah, so I was sitting there 2013. I had nothing to watch on Netflix. I was literally just doing the Netflix scroll where you can't find anything. And I saw this poster and it said Mr. Nobody. And I was like, hey, it's Jared Leto. It's going to be a wild ride, I'm sure. And I just clicked play and I had no idea what this movie was. I thought I was going to be asleep in 10 minutes. And instead, I could not look away for the next 2 hours. I was like, what in the world did I stumble into? I had never heard of this movie before, and I didn't know anybody that had ever seen it before, and it just blew my mind. Every second of it was just like blowing my mind further and further, and I couldn't believe that a movie like this existed. It really, really rocked my world as far as what movies can be and what a director can think about, how he can put his imagination onto the screen. This movie was really, really mind-blowing. And like I said, some of the music in it I had never heard before, and the way it paired with the family life, particularly the early scenes with the parents and the mother playing with Nemo as a baby. It was some of the most powerful child's perspective that I've ever seen in a movie. I think the only other exception I'd make to that would be like Tree of Life has a really, really good, powerful child's perspective early on in that movie as well. But this one just really, really was thought-provoking in ways I didn't realize a movie could. It had a lot of interesting philosophical stuff in it that I was all on board for. I loved the weird stuff about causality and the Big Bang and all this stuff about, time and the, string theory. And even though it's a bit incoherent, it's a bit all over the place. It's kind of dabbling in a million different philosophical fields. It's not really a treatise on any one topic. I still love that it's just always trying to grasp at things and do it in a really beautiful, cool visual way. And I just love that about it. I watched it a couple more times by myself after that. I kept coming back to it. I came back to it a couple times before I introduced it to a buddy of mine and totally blew his mind. We were about 3 beers deep, so this movie was like perfect to just rock our worlds, and it was awesome.
And you had a crazy movie night with this one too, right?
Yeah, so I started doing movie nights with some buddies about 2 years ago, and honestly, when I started doing movie nights, I knew I wanted to watch this one. I just wanted to make sure that I had the right group for it, or maybe prepare people for it.
You were weeding people out before you got to Mr. Nobody.
Yeah, so apologies to anyone that didn't get an invite. But I don't think, Jesse, you were coming to the movie nights yet.
Yeah, so apologies to me.
Yeah. No, I don't even think we had met by that point. But it was early on. Maybe it was like the third movie night I had. And I put this on, and I still didn't know the group very well. So I came out with some disclaimers being like, this is bizarre. Like, this is going to totally blow your mind. You might not like it, but that's okay. And I was like really worried that people were just going to like be shaking their heads. Like, what in the world did Daniel put in front of our faces? But the opposite happened, actually. Like, everybody loved it. I had a friend turn to me halfway through and they're like, Daniel, how is this not your favorite movie of all time?
Well, okay.
And I was like, maybe it is. No, it's not. But I was like, this is like a really cool movie. The fact that everyone's like really enjoying this, really like we were all enjoying having our minds blown by everything in front of us. And I really enjoyed that. That kind of solidified it. Like the experience of putting it in front of, 8+ guys and all friends of mine and having all of their minds blown and all of them love it, kind of elevated this movie for me as well. Yeah. So then here I am getting to watch it with you guys, and I'm glad Mike's already seen it. That's awesome. But I was like, I actually was hoping that none of you had seen it, just so that like, yeah.
50%. 50%.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. What about you guys? Vito, you want to go next?
Sure. Friend of the pod, Letney, told me about this movie way back in college. I've had it on my...
Mike told it to you beforehand. I feel like Mike has always been championing Mr. Nobody.
I didn't talk to Mike back then. We weren't really friends.
I think Letney was probably the one who turned me on to it. But you go ahead.
Yeah, it was 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
And so I actually have a copy of this. It's on my hard drive. I've had it for like 10 years.
Wow. Wow.
I love how this is going to be a story of Vito not watching Mr. Nobody for 10 years.
Why did it
I spent like 20 seconds talking about that, Jesse. No, so it's been on my list for forever to get to, and I never got to it. And so when Dan is like, now's the time, I had this big feeling of like, all right, this has been weighing on me for 10 years. I have multiple people in my life who have told me I should watch it. Now I must. And I watched it, and I have to say, I don't know if it was the years leading up to it or my aging. Maybe I am too old to have experienced this for the first time. I don't know what is with me. I liked it fine. I cannot say I very much enjoyed it. I think it's too long. I thought a lot of its ideas, because this came out in 2009, and I've been watching a lot of movies since then that I think maybe were even influenced by this one. I found its approach to its ideas not as original or fresh as I probably might have if I watched it back then. I do think it does a lot of things that are very interesting and very touching. I love his relationship between him and Anna and him and Elise. That really got to me, and I thought that expressing those romantic relationships in that way was just really stunning and human. And a lot of Jared Leto's performance was really gorgeous too. It was really touching. I just every moment that I thought, I'm really digging this, I was yanked out of it and thrown into another story that I didn't like as much. And then by the time I kind of came around to liking that story, I was yanked out of it and thrown into another one. And it's the same kind of syndrome I had a little bit with Everything Everywhere All at Once. But that one, I think, made the smart choice because it just pivoted so often. It was always like moving on. And this one, I felt like I was just getting I was so engaged, as I know the movie wanted me to be, with his and Anna's relationship, that when we moved away from it, I was like, no, go back to that. What happened? And then it showed me someone else. It's like, I don't care about you. Go away. So that might have been by movie's design. I didn't respond to it as well. And then the old man Leto stuff, we kept flashing back to it so much. And then in the end, when it is revealed that none of this happened anyway, I did have a moment of feeling like the protagonist wakes up and says, this is all a dream, because literally it was all a dream. And I got kind of pissed. I got a little bit pissed for a little bit about that. But I do understand the general point it was making, and I think its emotional core kept it from just being like a a flashy reveal, like haha, gotcha. It actually felt a little more earned. I'm not going to say all the way earned. I'm not entirely settled in how I feel about that, but that's kind of my general first impressions. I liked it, didn't love it. It was very touching and very annoying at different parts. That's how I feel. Or Jesse, either.
Yeah. I'll go next.
Yeah.
So as the other part of the 50% who had seen this movie before and has recommended it to some people, who may or may not be on this pod and didn't watch it for 10 years.
The other 50%.
Would that be?
No, I'm not holding it against you.
You better not.
But you can't hold any of those movies that I haven't watched against.
Oh no, that's not true. No, you forgave me for no reason. I still hold a grudge against you.
Damn it, I'm holding
and Jesse.
A grudge. Okay, no, I watched this back in like 2014 or 2015, and at the time, my now wife and I were doing like a long distance relationship, and she had seen it with some friends or something, and was like, "Oh, I think that." She remembers herself as not liking it, and that may be the case. Either way, it definitely incited me to go and watch it because I thought that what she was saying about it sounded interesting, and like I didn't want to talk to her about it until I saw it. So I watched this by myself, and yeah, I mean, it was at the time it was mind blowing. I'm still kind of amazed at some of the things that this movie does. Like Dan, you mentioned. The child perspective in like kind of just one small scene. Throughout this whole movie, there are things that are going on with the way that the director is having you take Nemo's perspective, or just kind of doing things that maybe exist in other movies and stuff, but he's just sort of throwing them off. Like, here's this thing. Here's this small little bit of a child seeing their mother act like as a baby. That's pretty powerful stuff, and it's just like it's a tiny portion of this movie that occurs in, or the visuals of this movie, the way that he like the car that rolls and how he connects that, like the way that he uses this movie to give us 3 lives of this one person and creates an entirely different emotional journey throughout all of them. That blew me away. That was something that I had not seen before. And it was, it was really cool for a 24-year-old dude fresh out of college. I don't think that the ending was very important to me at the time, which is weird, but I also don't think it's that important to me now. I still feel amazed by this movie. I still feel like I haven't watched it again in the intervening years. I kept thinking about like going back and watching and being like, you know what? I don't think it's time yet. I don't think it's time. So but I was feeling like it was about time. So Dan, I'm really, really grateful for you for including this in your birthday episode, because it did give me the opportunity to go back and watch it. And while maybe some of the amazement at the direction, at the visuals and the cinematography and all of that have worn off a little bit, I do think that there is something like, it makes me smile watching this movie, because the director makes decisions with this movie that are like, did you really just do all of that for this? But like, not like, oh, it's all worthless. It's kind of like more like it's a little bit of a big old f you. You know, the ending of this movie is like, yeah, it's all a dream, except it's not. It's also all extremely meaningful. Going back to the very beginning of the movie. I'm still impressed by it. I think it's extremely thought-provoking. I do see some spots, some holes in it that I didn't see back then. But I almost like it more because of them. I don't think this is a 5-star movie for me anymore, but it's I like being around it. You know what I mean?
Makes sense. It makes sense to me anyway, what you're saying.
Cool. Jesse, what about you? What's your impressions of Mr. Nobody?
Basically just going to rhyme with everything Vito just said.
Hey, that's that.
Yeah.
Hey!
Minus the old man part.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm okay being on the fucking island.
I guess I'll just add, or maybe elaborate on, like, yeah, maybe if I had seen this 10 years ago, I think I would have been blown away. I didn't see it 10 years ago, though. So now I'm seeing it now, especially after now we are like inundated with multiverse and different possibilities. So I feel like this has become more commonplace in our culture. Yeah. And I've experienced this idea. I kind of wish I would have seen this 10 years ago and been introduced to the idea of different timelines this way, because I think this is much better done than stuff I'm seeing now. But just because I'm used to it, I don't feel like it's having quite the same impact. And also, I also watched it alone. Like Liz came in and watched some of it with me and was just very confused. She's like, "Why is he on a spaceship all of a sudden? What is that? What are those lasers pointing at his forehead for?" And it was just it was like too strange for her because she didn't see all of it. So and then it was just me alone, and I felt like if I had been with a group of people and we had all been talking about it, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. I think I would have gotten more out of it. And I'm excited to do this pod because we finally get to talk about Mr. Nobody. Not spoiler free. Spoilers everywhere, and just talk about everything that was here, because there is a lot to experience. I guess another thing that I'll point out is that like I think there's a lot to experience in the movie emotionally, but there's kind of like too much. Like, I just felt like I was feeling everything all the time. And that was a bit much for me. Like, I kind of just wanted to feel one thing one time. Not just, like, be really happy or sad about Anna and then just, like, be bummed out about Elise and just feel like nothing for Jean. Poor Jean.
Yeah.
Poor Jean.
It's true. I was like, can we not with this one? Can we go to the other ones? Skip this. No,
like that's the way Nemo was, and that's the way I, as like watching it, was like, yeah, please move away from Jean. She does not matter in any way.
There was a moment when I was watching. I think it's when Jared Leto, when Nemo is gonna get with Anna, and then like the rain washes the phone number away, and then he can't run after her, and he can't have a way to find her. So he goes to the lighthouse, and then he's just sleeping on the bench. I was like, wow, this is a fucking bummer. Like, jeez. Could we? Maybe now we can. Wait, what other storyline can we go to? The really disordered, like unhappy, suicidal wife? No. What about the one whose name I can't remember? No. Old man? No. There's nowhere to go. I cannot escape this part.
What about being paralyzed on the bed?
Let's go back to Mars. Let's go back to Mars.
Maybe there's something going on Mars that must be better than what's going on Earth right now.
Lying on a bench, slowly levitating.
I think what you said about like the multiverse being commonplace now in popular culture definitely makes me, it does take something away from this movie in a certain sense. Like now one of the things that blew my mind is like, yeah, that's happening in Marvel, and it's happening in everything everywhere all at once, and
Rick and Morty for years.
Rick and Morty. Yeah. Like, so definitely I see that. And like one of the things that I loved about this being so disjointed with all these different timelines seemingly happening at the same time at different moments and sometimes backwards. I like growing up, I always had this fixation with like thinking about how like the butterfly effect, right? That like every decision I make is pointing me on a path that I like irrevocably am going to go towards that path. Like if I trip on the sidewalk today, it changes my entire day, my entire week, my entire month, and that fascinated me, that like every decision we make is so impactful, even if it's, we don't even know the impact, but it must be, it's going to have ramifications that we'll never be able to quantify. So that idea of like every decision having a huge impact and us kind of not ever knowing what those impacts are, or, where that leaf that came from the storm and made me slip came from. Like, I love that, how it just randomly will like explain something that happened. Like when his shoe comes off and it randomly jumps to the shoe manufacturing factory and the guy's like, going cheap on the shoelaces. It's like, it's showing you something that must be the case. Like this must be the cause of this, but we will never know in our life that that's the case. And it's something that's always fascinated me. And I've always kind of daydreamed about like, what could my life look like if I made different decisions, or what could it look like,
Just to you just sparked something in my imagination. This is exactly the sort of relationship that I had with the movie Signs. There's no coincidence, right? Everything is everything's eventual. Everything's for a purpose. There's no such thing as an accident, really. And this movie takes a slightly different tack. That one ascribes it to God or fate, right? This one is like, no, the reason that you couldn't have Anna's number is because that unemployed Brazilian dude, it's his fault. All right. And you know why it's his fault? Because your fault, because you bought 2 cheap jeans last month. That's why. Everything's connected. And it's a different kind of like mirror image between like, well, God must have made this so, like in Signs, God ordained these things for a reason. And this movie, which is like, no, it has a very kind of mundane, boring human explanation.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's like sparked and I wanted to share.
Well, also, I realized watching this movie that I've seen this before in Dune. Like, this is the premise of Dune. A person can see their future and all the different, like, everything that causes something to happen in front of them. And then what do you do with all that info? That's kind of what it comes down to at the end.
Don't spoil the end of Dune.
I've just spoiled the middle of Dune.
I don't know if I've gotten to the middle of Dune. I'm not sure.
There's a middle of Dune in each of us. Yeah. So I definitely, I really, really loved that about it. And I do see that has been done in other movies and done differently.
Before we move on from Mr. Nobody, from talking about it in particular, I still want to know, I know this is running long, but still, I've been wanting to talk about this, right? So, like, there is one main timeline, and it's the Anna timeline, right? Isn't that what the whole Leaf thing running?
Anna is like the right timeline. It's the right.
Isn't it like?
Yeah.
So it seems to me like he sees all the timelines and he chooses Anna, which is why he goes and picks the Leaf, and that causes her to go to the circle spot.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that what happens?
So I think you can take this different ways. I do think that was probably in the mind of the directors and the writers, is that he decided not to go with his mom or his dad. He made no decision, right? He ran down the path without, away from his parents. And he basically became a homeless person for the rest of his life, and then found Anna as a homeless man. I think you can read it that way, that is like the timeline that's really, really happening. But you can also read it different. You can read it other ways too. Cause like there's the whole idea of that time, like the Big Bang leads to the Big Crunch, where time all reverses.
Mm-hmm.
And it also shows that as like Jared Leto as an old man and everything's walking, he's walking backwards and everybody's going backwards, and he's doing that obnoxious laugh.
But the payoff of the Big Crunch is that he gets to be with Anna again, even as a little kid.
That's the emotional like center of the movie, is his relationship with Anna.
Right. Yeah. No, I was more addressing like, is there one real timeline and everything else is a potential timeline?
No, I think the preferred timeline, the preferred way that like what the filmmaker wants to leave you with is that relationship with Anna. But I got the sense that all these timelines were true. Like, we were supposed to believe that they were true, and even if we didn't believe they were true, it didn't really matter.
Right. It doesn't. Yeah, that's what I think, is that it doesn't matter whether they all happened or none of them happened. It's enough to say that they were all possibly going to happen.
Right.
That for this one boy about to make this decision to go with his mom or his dad or neither, all of these possibilities were on the table. Maybe some of that was in his imagination. Maybe all of it's in his imagination, but that they are all like potential futures for him at this one point in his life.
Sometimes I wonder if they're all in his imagination because of the quote from the beginning about the pigeon. Like, if the pigeon is flapping its wings, it'll keep flapping its wings because it thinks that that's the thing that's causing it to get food. So maybe this little boy just imagining things in his head just because of that one time when he saw the future with his dad and the car rolling down, he thinks that this is going to change things when maybe he has no control.
Also, just love the mom just being like, so you definitely sabotaged your dad's car, Right, and that's why you think you can see the future. And the kid's like, what?
Yeah, I kind of took it that way, that like each of them are equally real and unreal. Like, in his, like, that's the great reveal, is like Nemo, Mr. Nobody is just a figment of the child's imagination, and that's why there's no record of him, and there's really no record of anybody. It's all just a figment of the kid's imagination. And even this like extreme cause and effect relationship, the butterfly effect that we're going through here, is it itself sort of wiped out by that revelation and by the child's choice not to choose, sort of, or to choose himself. Or I feel like that final, there's an incompleteness to like, it doesn't quite stick the landing, but I get what the symbolism is. I get that with him running off into, you know, the woods by himself, it's supposed to symbolize like he's making a third choice that's neither his mother or his father. It's choosing himself in his own life, and also to not be bound by choice. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, sorry, I was agreeing until the last part was what I said. Maybe too.
Okay.
Not be bound by choice, because I think the movie ends. So for my criticism of it being too long, I also think it ends way too abruptly. I think it just ends, and I understand that there's not really an answer to be given, and my desire for an answer is a very human one when presented with the possibility of choice in the future. I don't need to be spoon-fed an ending, but with an ending like this, which seems to suggest that Anna is the future, like maybe a little bit more or maybe a little bit less, you know, either more ambiguous or more certain. You know, is the top wobbling, or did the top fall, or is the top going to keep spinning? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Or maybe it's just that in his imagination, he really just wants to be with Anna, because it's still just a little kid.
Yeah.
Imagining all this.
Yeah. I think, I mean, that's kind of, and I mean, even there in that timeline, like, he gets with her and he dies in a car accident, like going off the bridge, right? Like that's going to end pretty quick.
Right. He has kids with her.
They're going to be like 5 or 6, and he's going to go off it.
Still worth it.
Yeah, still worth it, and still great. But I think like there was a key, I can't remember the line exactly, but that old Nemo says about basically like life is incredible. Life is amazing. Every moment of it is amazing. And that's
profound.
Pretty, what was that?
Profound.
Well, yeah.
I think it's not.
But I mean, like it's that's juxtaposed in the same way that the music and the cinematography, like the visuals of the movie, are with what's like the emotional weight of what's happening, of like everything that's happening to this kid in this life that he's imagined for himself. I thought that the idea is like, when we hit this sort of the big crunch and time starts going backwards, it's less real within the movie and more symbolic, where it's like you sort of unlocked the joy of life by unlocking yourself from this awful decision given to a 10-year-old boy.
Choose.
Yeah,
you
choose
have 10
between
seconds.
your mother and your father. It's awful. Here on the train platform. What?
Yeah, could we have done this at like in a mediation or like a courtroom or something?
Isn't that how it's usually done?
Yeah.
They could have at least done it the night before.
Yeah.
No, there's a scene even before he has to choose between his parents, where he's looking at the donuts, the 2 different donuts, and he's like, "You have to choose." And he's like, if you don't want to make the wrong choice, because then you'll be stuck with it forever. But you have to choose. He does say that, like, that's the hardest thing about choice, is you are kind of bound to it. And is it like, okay, he made a third choice with his parents. He chose to not choose either of them, but that's still a choice. And you're still like, it's, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the deeper analysis you can run in this movie, it doesn't really stand up too much to like very deep analysis. It kind of reminds me of like The Matrix in that way, that there's a whole lot of like random philosophical pieces. Like there's some Buddhism and some Hindu and some like Christianity, and it's all like this hodgepodge. And it's, you can see it as being like, it's just having a veneer of depth, or it's, you know, it's trying to have the trappings of philosophical, you know, intrigue or interest. And I don't know. I feel like this movie does very well with juggling all of these different things that don't really fit, but then like life is weird, life is complicated. And I felt like this sometimes where it's like, it's hard to mesh all the things you believe and you think and you know, and life is so complicated. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that's ultimately what I've grown to love about this movie, besides the analysis and the, you know, the timelines. And I've grown to just love the experience of watching this movie and like putting my heart on, you know, into the VCR and like just letting this movie play on my heart. Like I love the way that it shows these relationships, the way it shows this really, really like heart wrenching, like I've mentioned with Elise, that part definitely affected me more. Like around the time I was going to get married, I watched this movie and it was like, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine having that big of a struggle, like to love a wife and have her go through such a painful debilitation, like this bipolarism. And it's amazing the way it treats the subject really, really, I think really beautifully. And the way that Nemo is like there for her, when he burns his car and like goes and, you know, it's beautiful the way he treats her. And when she's in the rain and he just goes and he's like, I'm never leaving you. Like, I don't know what I would do without you. It's so beautiful. And I've grown to just really love those scenes so much that it kind of, any holes that I could see in it have kind of gone by the wayside.
Yeah. I think judging by the first part of this movie, I was expecting to be like a far more intellectual movie. And then while in the middle of watching, it's like, oh, I'm just supposed to be feeling what's happening and not so much thinking about what's happening. Even though I think that is an option, I think it's better to not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Jumping in real quick to tell you about something I'm personally very excited for. It's Sir's Furniture. SIRRS Furniture. Now, if you've been listening to our podcast for a long time, then you know about Sir. We did the crossover with the Before Sunset trilogy. He's been on a couple of our episodes. I've been on a couple of his. He's a dear friend. And he happens to make, besides a fantastic podcast, beautiful, custom-made wood cutting boards of whatever flavor of wood you want in whatever kind of design you want. It's beautiful custom work. And with summertime coming up, I know that I'm going to be out barbecuing. I'm going to be out going to birthday parties. I'm going to be going to a couple of weddings. And it's sometimes hard to pick, you know, what to give somebody, what to give a friend of mine. Sir's Furniture is your one-stop shop for cutting boards, charcuterie boards, coasters, anything that you can really think of that is handmade, handcrafted, and designed woodcraft. You've been using a small plastic board for years. You know you have. Or, you know, take a look in your kitchen at those dried out twigs that you call cutting boards. And go to sirsfurniture.com, SIRRS furniture.com/NYFM and check out the wide selection of beautiful handcrafted wooden cutting boards that are on display there. Now, listen, let me tell you, a little bit ago when Mike welcomed in his third child to the world, Jesse and I banded together and we pitched in on one of the big Bertha, I think it's called the Martha, of the cutting boards. It was big, it had a nice channel around the side, and we put Mike's last name right in the middle. And this board was gorgeous. I was upset that I didn't have Mike's last name so that I couldn't just keep it for myself. It was the single most beautiful cutting board I've ever seen. So that whether you love to cook, barbecue, or just need that perfect gift, Sir has what you need. So for 10% off, use our link, Sir's Furniture. That's SIRRS furniture.com patreon.com/NYFM. That'll tell him that we sent you.
Yeah. So our second film that I wanted to talk about is the 2013 Denis Villeneuve movie Enemy. This is his second movie that he came out in 2013. He also came out with Prisoners, also Jake Gyllenhaal. I guess apparently they were released in the opposite order that they were filmed in. So he filmed Enemy first, and then filmed Prisoners, and then released Prisoners, and then released Enemy. I'm not sure why 2 movies in the same year. That's very ambitious. I know he was making waves, and he still is, but he was making a lot of early waves at this point in his career, and so maybe he was just trying to get some big ones out there. And Jake Gyllenhaal is obviously a spectacular actor, one of my favorites of all time. And I wanted to mention it's based off of a novel. This movie is by Jose Saramago. It's called The Double. The movie is written by him, Jose, and Javier Guyon. It's starring Jake Gyllenhaal, as we mentioned. He's both Adam and Anthony in the movie. So I think it's impossible to talk about this movie without talking about the spoilers. So he's a history professor that, finds a doppelganger in a movie, and he's trying to find out who this person is, this person that looks exactly like him. So Jake Gyllenhaal plays both the character of the history professor and this actor. The history professor, Jake Gyllenhaal has as his wife, it's Sarah Gadon as Helen. And then Anthony, the actor, has Melanie Laurent as Mary. And Melanie Laurent is the one I was confusing earlier. She's in
Inglourious Bastards.
Inglourious Bastards as well. She is the French lady who's amazing.
Shoshana,
yeah. Spectacular in that movie as well. And I think she's honestly both of the women in this, I think, are spectacular, along with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's a very small cast. It's essentially just those 3 actors and actresses.
Yeah, Mary is like the only part of the movie where you kind of breathe a sigh of relief when she's on screen. It's like, oh, maybe not everything is terrible.
I kind of want to just jump into first impressions for myself. So I saw this maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I was just getting into Villeneuve. I was loving everything he made, and I wanted to keep up with it. And I saw that he made this movie Enemy that nobody in my life had mentioned. And so I just put it on one day, and it really, really confused me. I didn't know what to think about it. It took probably a week before I decided, yeah, I think I really, really liked it. I was really conflicted on it. It's a strange movie. There's a lot of naked women and a lot of spiders. And I was like, what in the world? Sometimes they're the same thing. So it was very, very strange. And I was very conflicted.
I've never, ever seen a naked woman spider before.
Yeah.
Nightmare fuel, that is.
Yeah.
Definitely nightmare fuel.
Yep. Yeah.
What about you guys?
For me, I watched it last night for the very first time in my entire life. And it was riveting. I wouldn't say I love this movie, but I have profound respect for it. And, continue to have a ton of respect for Denis Villeneuve. He's incredible. Great filmmaker. And Jake Gyllenhaal is a great actor. I mean, come on, this is wild. And they all do a really great job. That's my impression. I don't know. What was that?
When I saw most of it last night, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a Mike movie. Mike's going to like this one.
I don't know if I'd say I like this movie. This is a little too much for me to say I like this movie, but I respect the crap out of this movie. This is wow. Yeah. What about you, Jesse? What are your impressions of Enemy?
Yeah, this one I really didn't know what to think of after I watched it. I still don't know what to think. I thought it was really dreary. The music is just it's pounding. It makes you feel sad all the time. The colors make you feel sad.
I felt
everything
sick.
just
actively
feels
ill.
Everything feels gross, and
brown.
It's all brown and yellow,
and nasty, and the city feels lifeless. And there's spiders and naked women spiders. And I don't know. I watched it. It's I don't know what I just watched. I guess I have to watch a YouTube video. And then I Googled a YouTube video, and then it's Denis Villeneuve who just comes on screen and just so this movie is about a man who's cheating on his pregnant wife, and this is what's going on in his subconscious. I said, oh, I guess that's what I just watched. I've never had a director just come out and tell me what the movie was about.
That is very odd.
Pretty clear.
Yeah.
Another thing that's odd about it is apparently everybody involved in the movie was forced to sign an NDA that they would never discuss publicly what the spiders represent. So
damn it.
You'll never find an actor, actress, anybody, I don't know, maybe it's long enough after the movie now that they could talk about it, but that was a thing. They had to sign saying, I will never discuss, explain, or describe what I think the spiders are, which is kind of weird.
I did see a YouTube video that explained that pretty well. Basically, that there are spiders, they weave webs trap things, he feels trapped, and they're also scary creatures, but in all reality, they want to hide from bigger predators, right? And he's the actual predator, which is why it's cowering from him. That's his. Yeah. Anyway,
or you can view it as a straight up alien invasion movie, and when we're being invaded by spider people. You can do that.
He's the only one that can see the spiders.
Yeah, or by accident, when they took over our Matrix, they accidentally made two of him. I saw this for the first time, the 2015 summer 2015. I saw it with a good friend of mine, Alex. We watched it. When it was over, we said, what the f***? We turned it off. And then I watched it again with my wife a couple years ago because I remembered the what the f***. Didn't say what the f*** that time. I have to say, Dan, I liked Mr. Nobody. I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time. And I've been thinking about Enemy since I saw it, 7 years ago. I don't like Enemy. I didn't like it the first time. I didn't like it the second time. I don't like it this time. I've given it enough shots. I have watched the YouTube videos. I've had long conversations about this movie. I don't like it. I think what it's doing is cool, and that's kind of where I'm at. So I was mostly interested in coming to this conversation to hear what you thought.
Yeah. So the thing that I think I most appreciate about this, that the reason that it stuck with me, is it's always been interesting to me. This is similar to Mr. Nobody, where it's this fascination with what could be. And with this movie, he's seeing what is happening at the same time of what should be happening. He should be with his wife, his pregnant wife, but then he's also cheating on her, and he's living this dual life, right? He's actively living a secretive life of disloyalty, where he's going to this crazy, I don't even know what to call it.
It's definitely like a sex club.
It's a really, really elitist, cultist almost sex club. And then the moment that he kills off that part of him, that he decides, no, I'm going to stay with my wife. And, it's such a quirky, weird, impactful way to show the car spins off and, flips over and they apparently die. That's him deciding to stay with his wife and stay loyal with the baby. And then he sees the key. And in that moment, it's temptation comes knocking at his door again. Mm-hmm. And he realizes he's still weak. He's going to go right back to that life.
Yeah.
And that with the spiders, I think it's kind of a dual symbolism of the spiders are the things that trap things, but then also, so he feels trapped by his wife, who's pregnant, about to have their baby. And we're all dads. We all know that that's a huge responsibility. And it, it kind of takes you out of a lot of things maybe you wish you could do that you did as a bachelor, right? Like it really is, it ties you down in a very real way. And of course, we all know that that's the beauty of it. You know, it's a struggle and a privilege, but he's seeing just the struggle, and that this is going to that he's going to be trapped by his wife and his family. But then he's also trapped by his temptations, by his struggles with this, you know, this life in, you know, with the club and with his mistress and all that. So I think the spider and the webs and all that is very, it's very neat. I do agree. Like this is not a movie that, this is only the second time I've watched it, is for this podcast. So it's definitely not a movie that I don't even know if I enjoy watching this movie. That's the weird thing.
Yeah.
And so like, I agree with you there that like, it's not I feel like it's an important movie though. That's the weird thing that I'm conflicted about with this movie is I think it's important. I think it's a movie that will stick with me and that I will think about, but I don't think I'll ever really recommend it or like talk about it even with people. It's kind of just, if I find someone out in the wild that's seen it, I'm going to talk about it with them, but I don't know that I don't know. It's almost like a window into some of my darker thoughts and like, in a weird way. And so that's why I think I like it, and I like that it exists, and I like that I've seen it, but it doesn't go much further than that.
Yeah, I think I feel mostly the same way. I'm not sure if I enjoy watching it, but I do feel better for having seen it. I do enjoy the fact that I can think about the big weighty themes of this movie and being stuck in this cycle of I guess, struggling to know whether or not you should cheat on your wife. No, never mind. Maybe I don't even enjoy thinking about that. But like, I enjoy thinking about that very abstractly in this movie alone.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
You're going to face no judgment here. I think that's actually a pretty natural part of being married, is thinking about these ideas. What if this wasn't the case? What if this life were different? What if I had chosen differently? What if I choose differently now? I think that's just a part of being a human, especially one in such a committed kind of non-moving relationship. That is something that I do enjoy about this movie, and I will say that as far just to pull back and go a little bit more higher level, as a piece of visual filmmaking, I do think it's incredibly distinctive. No movie I could think of looks like this, for better or worse. And
well, maybe Blade Runner 2049.
No, this is sickening. This is a sickening hue that is placed over this movie.
I was mostly thinking of the only thing that it drew to mind for me, and it's not exactly the same in many ways. It's not the same in many ways, but the card counter, just in like dead spaces sort of feeling of the whole movie. It's about
different color palette, but I could see what you mean by how, like, here's Jake Gyllenhaal. He is walking alone in a huge parking structure.
Or like even like his apartment.
House.
Both of the apartments, they're just sort of
empty.
But
to finish my point, what I mean by that is that the images of either the giant spider over the city, or like you were talking, Dan, in the car wreck, the spider web that seems to form in the broken glass, and then the final reveal of the room-sized tarantula. Those three images are things that have really stuck around. So whenever to the point where when anyone even says enemy, just the word, I think of the giant spider over the city. And it's really gotten in deep for a movie I don't like. I think about this movie a lot. And in that way, people are always like, oh, I don't like watching horror movies because it puts images in my head. And I'm like, yeah, but I know that's fake. This one transcends fake into, this is like the subconscious, right? You're portraying the subconscious, and that's very, very real. And so these sorts of movies kind of worm their way into my head. Especially this one. Yeah, I think about it a lot. I didn't have a further point than that. I just wanted to share that. That's what I like about Enemy a lot.
Yeah. What did you guys, the ones that just saw it for the first time, that last scene with the big spider?
What the
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I had no idea what to think. That's like, why is she the spider? Who is the spider? Is she going over the city? And then I watched the YouTube video. I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
It's so confounding at first because it's so random.
Feminine.
Yeah,
you know?
it's so random.
Like we know there's been spiders in the movie, but that's the last. Even in a movie with spiders, that is the last thing I would have expected to see. Not necessarily a spider, but a spider that big.
Yeah, and especially because she's the one like beautiful light in the movie, and she is throughout the whole movie. She is kind and she's loving and she's trying to make things work out, and she's pretty.
She's literally like every time she's on screen, the colors change. She's brighter. The sickening orange and yellow just kind of fades away when she's there.
Yeah, like plants. There's plants around her.
Yeah.
When she's there, and then like for her to be the spider, very shocking.
I will let me share. I will say the first time I watched this movie, I was not even thinking at all about the subconscious or symbolic imagery because it just didn't make sense to me. I was like, "What's the symbolic imagery of a woman spider?" Didn't even think about it because I was much younger. So I really was just like, okay, so there's aliens. All right, spider aliens.
I think I would have.
That's this movie. That's the spider alien movie. That's where all them spiders, they are coming down and they are wearing us like suits.
It's the Thing.
It's the Thing with spiders.
That's great.
But it's terrifying. That's the way he sees his wife, as a nasty spider. When we, the audience, see her as like the only saving grace of anything happening on screen in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, the first time I saw that scene, all the tension throughout the entire movie, I feel like was building to that moment. And I jumped. Like, I don't have a natural fear of spiders in general, but that scared the crap out of me. And it's, to this day, it's like one of the most shocking scenes that I've ever seen. And I think it's because of all the buildup. It's really just incredibly.
Because the double dies, right? And then you think it's like all good. And you're kind of going, what was that for? Like, did we find out why? Like, the movie seems to be ending. Why? Yeah. Why did any of this occur?
Yeah. And it's really weird because he's like looking at the key like, oh, I'm going to go do this. You're like, that doesn't seem like what he would do. And
why would you go do that?
Like we spent this whole movie getting to know these two guys, and we know this one, Adam, I think. Yeah, Adam really well. The history teacher really well. And like, he's not confident. And like, he looks pretty confident right now. That's weird.
Yeah.
And you know what else is weird? They talk about like how his name used to be Daniel, right? Or maybe that's the actor's name. Yeah, but there's a third one. So it's almost like maybe this has already happened before. He was already cheating on her before there was already this double. And then she even says, like, your mom called. That's like one of the last lines in the movie. And that starts the beginning of the movie over when the mom calls. So it's almost like this is a never-ending cycle of the cycle of dictatorship that he was talking about at the beginning.
Very neat. It's a very good observation.
I guess I'm done with the neat observations. Dan, you brought these two movies together for a reason, for one big question, right?
Yeah. So the thing that I think connects these the most is that they fall under, in my mind, this bucket of like, and it's kind of it's a very nebulous bucket that is hard to describe, but the idea of like an existentialist movie. And to describe what I mean by that, I took like a college class on existentialism, and it was very confusing, very interesting. We studied essentially to put it as well as I can into a like 10-second thing. The existentialist movement, it was like a philosophical movement in the 19th century where it was a reaction to the rationalist movement, where people thought like everything is explainable if you just use your reason. Like the intellect is king. You can explain everything in the universe and how everything works if you think hard enough about it and use your reason. And the existentialists were kind of a reaction to that, where they said, maybe reason isn't everything. Maybe people's individual human experience also matters. And they took it to, other ones would then further take it to say experience is everything. Experience is the only thing that matters in our lives. Like if you just study the human experience, you will learn, the truths of life, the meaning of life, all of it's just wrapped up in your experience. And it became a literary movement also around the same time. So you have the works of like Kierkegaard, and the Metamorphosis is a famous one, Dostoevsky, all the Russian, Solzhenitsyn, like all of these authors are considered existentialist authors because they're trying to show one human life or one human section of their life, and show it in so much like rawness and vulnerability, and just all like the psyche of the individual is just plastered against a wall, and you are there observing this experience, and that you're supposed to draw meaning out of that experience that you're witnessing. So that's kind of how I see these movies, as almost like you're supposed to just embrace them and try to see yourself in them or see the human experience in them. They're not movies that like necessarily have good narratives or good like beginning, middle, end, or how did you like the third act, as opposed to, how did you feel like it all wrapped up in the end? Like those questions that we normally ask about movies, I feel like these movies don't fall into the same criticism or analysis. And that's kind of the common ground I see between them. And I kind of wanted to ask if you guys have similar movies or other movies that you could add to this list of these two movies. And is this something that I'm kind of just making up, or do you guys have a similar experience with, like, there are movies that I just go into experience and I kind of turn my brain off for a little bit?
The Master is very close to probably my favorite movie. And that's a movie that I've described before as like a comfort movie for me, because I can just watch it at any time. Like when I'm sick, I watch The Master. Like when I'm sad, I watch The Master. When I'm happy, I watch The Master. I just love The Master so much. And that's something that it has ideas in it that I like thinking about. Like I find pleasurable to think about because they are close to my experience. But it's kind of like what you're saying, Dan, is it's asking you to sit with it, to be with it. It's not really interested in telling you what's going on. It's just happening. I mean, you're going to see it. You're going to see these two men, and sometimes their conflict is going to be amorphous or even indirect or almost completely obscure what it is that's going on. But it's about feeling. It's about being present with it and gaining something from it. It's like when you ask famous musicians, like, what's that song about? They're like, make up your own mind. Because it's so much more boring when someone's like, yeah, you see, I had this girlfriend named Rosie and I wrote that song about her. Because now it's not for you now, it's for them. And it's so much nicer when it's for you because you made it for you. The Master is like my movie because I've made it for me. And I've been given that freedom. And is that kind of what you're saying, Dan?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of it, is that every person is kind of going to get a different thing out of the movie, because they are going to see themselves, different parts of themselves in the movie that another person, everybody's bringing a different thing to the table when they go watch a movie. And these movies, I feel like they're going to highlight the things that you see in yourself, or maybe the things that you never thought of about yourself. Yes. And that's a very personal experience.
Yeah. Like
I would actually lump The Master in with these two. Oh, I'm sorry.
When I heard like Denis Villeneuve's like summary of The Enemy, I was like, that's kind of you're minimalizing your own work. You shouldn't do that. Like I know what he was saying is actually true, and that's what it is. But the subconscious is kind of like such a big, broad subject that it almost feels weird to like just say, oh yeah, it's about the subconscious in a particular situation. And then the movie exists to kind of explore this big, broad, weird subject that we all have inside of us. So we're all going to get something a little different out of it. And it's all going to be pretty similar and somewhat the same. And yeah, if we're also talking about movies that we would kind of lump in here, I would definitely say It's Such a Beautiful Day is in here as well.
Yep.
It's, that is just an experience. And it really does have 3 acts, I think, literally. But they don't correspond to the normal way a story works in a lot of ways, especially at the end. And also I would lump the Before trilogy in here too. Again, not a very traditional structure. It's just there for you to be with these two and hear what they're saying and experience it with them. And you can think about it, but you're really just supposed to feel.
Right.
And I think the movies don't even function if you can't.
It's a good call.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have a submission?
Submission to the bucket. To Dan's bucket.
To his amorphous, sort of undefined bucket.
bucket.
It's a well-defined bucket.
I mean, almost anything Paul Thomas Anderson-y. Magnolia, for sure. But, I mean, I don't know if that's unexpected. I feel like there's a lot of stuff like this out there, to a certain degree. For me, I feel like as I get older, I go more towards like smaller movies, or movies that are less like, oh, what's the meaning of life? Or like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like, at least with Enemy is a bit more of a puzzle box to me, which is what I like about it. It's like there's very clear and specific meanings for each of these things that are going on here. You like, that's part of the entertainment factor for me, is like figuring that out and being like, oh, okay, like here, this is that, boom, 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 there we go. Oh, fascinating. Amazing that they were able to draw that out. And it's like the perfect time too for that kind of a movie. It's an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Whereas, and so like I kind of struggle with the idea of calling that movie like an existentialist movie, although like I don't think I've got a very good understanding of what that means. But
I think the way that Dan defined it fits within his definition.
Yeah, I do. I agree. It does. But like Mr. Nobody, definitely, like, it's definitely that sort of broad, sweeping movie where it's asking you to feel your ways into ideas, and into things. And so finally, the outcome of the movie and the final sort of like, oh yeah,
I'm thinking of
Charlie Kaufman. Charlie Kaufman like wrote the book on
existentialism, modern existentialism.
Yeah.
What is it, like postmodern existentialism?
Postmodern.
Is that being John Malkovich?
Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah.
Eternal Sunshine.
I'm thinking of anything's adaptation. Yeah.
Oh, I also add Birdman as a submission to the bucket.
Yes.
That's a good submission.
Oh, we should do Birdman sometime.
I'd love to talk about Birdman. We'd have to have Isaac back. Isaac loves Birdman, or loved Birdman back when.
I wrote a paper about Birdman in my college class.
Then you're going to have to read it out loud.
The audience.
Can I edit it first?
Absolutely not. I want the unedited, the full board Dan of 10 years ago.
Boring.
Yeah. It almost seems like the goal of these movies is totally different than a standard story movie, which is like, you're just supposed to be different at the end of this. And if you're not, the movie's kind of not worked for you.
Yeah. The Lighthouse.
And I definitely feel like
my way to existentialism.
I definitely feel like there are moments I would never enjoy watching a movie like this. And then there are moments when this is the only type of movie that I'm going to enjoy. Like I have to be in mood for it. And though it's kind of hit and miss. I don't know what it's connected to in my life, but it's definitely a mood I have to be in to experience a movie like this and get something out of it.
I will say The Lighthouse with your father-in-law is not a good combo, and don't do that.
That's why I also want to say, I don't know if you can officially say The Lighthouse doesn't work for you at this time, Jesse. That's too awkward. That's too awkward, I think, to have a good ruling on that movie.
I still remember it. I still go over it in my head. I don't care.
It's been tainted. I'm saying it's been tainted by such an uncomfortable viewing experience.
I don't think I'm ever going to watch it again. I don't think I will.
All right.
It's on somebody else's birthday episode.
Yeah. Say hello to next August. I think we should wrap it up, gents. Dan, do you have anything further you'd like to tack on to your birthday?
No, I just want to say thanks, guys. This has been fun. I knew that these movies they're tough ones to talk about. Like, there's a lot to be said and there's a lot to be felt, and there's a lot of differing opinions about them. And my opinions about these movies, I'm sure, will be very different probably in 10 years. So I just wanted to say thanks, guys, for doing this for my birthday.
It was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for choosing these movies. This has been a great revisit and new introduction, too, for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was
I
fun watching
appreciate
both
it.
of them. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, from all of us at Not Your Father's Movies, happy birthday, Dan. I'm Vito.
I'm Mike.
I'm Dan.
I'm Jesse.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Not Your Father's Movies. Please let us know what you think about movies and our discussions on our Twitter at NYF Movies, on our Not Your Father's Movies Facebook group, follow us on Instagram, or email us at notyourfathersmovies@gmail.com. Also, please consider supporting us on Patreon. This podcast has cost us a lot of time, effort, and money. Please consider contributing and we will start sending you monthly newsletters, our bonus WhatsApp episodes, and even an NYFM mug. We hope to hear from you soon. Lastly, thank you to Max Agros for our awesome theme playing right now, and to Andy LaFave from Don't Dance for the remix that you hear at the beginning of every episode. Thanks again for listening to Not Your Father's Movies.